what strikes me today after the presentation about the fisheries, or the fishes, the fish populations, is that you already collect a lot of data about fish movements and fish reproduction. So it should be very useful for the scientists who study fish as well. Do you have a sense of the uptake at the moment? You say that you will be concentrating on that in the coming years, but do you know to what extent it is being used currently?
Yes, we get a lot of hits on our databases, and there's a lot of downloads, several hundred a month. Quite a lot of interest from overseas, of course, in our data sets, and we're encouraging that because, the data that we have is quite unique as one of the few data sets on the African continent. And so we encourage that our data is used not only by the local scientists, but also by the international community. It will also strengthen a lot of the large projects and programs like IPCC, IPBES, and so forth, if our data is included in there. Locally, I think there can definitely be, more scientists making use of our data. And I think that is we are partly to blame for that in not making this obvious to the scientists that this very valuable data set is freely available and accessible for them to use. So one of our next steps is to have a roadshow and to go out there and have workshops and show the scientists that this data is available and that they can use it.
Yes, very interesting. You referred to, when you said Marion Island, you said there was a workshop with the community. Can you tell us?
That's part of the SAPRI. So we form part of SAPRI. Mm-hmm. So we don't do it in any of our stakeholder workshops in isolation. We work through the South African Polar Research Infrastructure, and in this case particularly what they call LTO land community. So we just participate in that and then offer, in addition to the research infrastructure and platforms that SAPRI provide, we have additional resources that the LTO land stakeholder community can have access to. So that's essentially what we do. One of our biggest partners, as I said, is DFFE Oceans and Coasts. They have their own research group that focuses on the sub-Antarctic. So we're working very closely with them as well and see where we can support, especially the long-term data sets. The long-term data sets are so valuable, especially in climate and global change research. And all over the world, not only in South Africa, a lot of these data sets are being stopped for financial reasons or because the principal investigator is retiring or something. And what we are trying to do is to ensure that these are maintained indefinitely into the future. If the community feels there is value to it, yes.
Fantastic. I think after today's discussion, the community will. Well, those who have listened will definitely see the need for it. Can I ask you how many divers you have working for SAEON with the dive unit?
Yeah, so we have about 7 or 8. So it's not a big team. So according to the regulations, you need at least a team of 4. If we go out on a boat, 5 forming part of the dive team. So it's quite onerous. We try and, on a regular basis, send divers for training, students coming through or young staff members. And we collaborate very closely with the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity, who also has a dive team. So they help us and we help them. And we've also set up a strong collaboration with DFFE Oceans and Coast, so that when they're diving in our region, then we assist them with divers and dive supervisors, and they do likewise when we're working up in their neck of the woods. So there's always a shortage of divers, of course.
Right, is it?
Yeah.
And do these divers have to be scientists? Are they scientists first and then divers?
No, not necessarily. Quite a few of them are, but most of our oceanographic technicians are research divers as well. Although most of our technicians are qualified scientists, they have a BSc or MSc degree often,
Yes.
and then decide to, rather than going into the sciences, go into more the technical field.
Right.
So there's no requirement that they must be a scientist first. But most of our divers are scientists, yes.
Very interesting.
You're able to identify what you need to collect if it's not just a pure technical research dive, if it's a biodiversity sample collection dive, for example.
Right. And on that note, it might not seem terribly relevant, but I want to ask about demographic diversity of human beings
Yes.
in this area, at SAEON and among your partners.
Yes.
Because it does seem at face value that that Black researchers are kind of scarce.
Yeah. I wouldn't say Black researchers are scarce in this field. I think our demography, we're sitting at between 79% and 81% transformed within our one leg coastal node / SMCRI. A lot of these scientists have gone through our ranks, so they maybe started as interns or students, honor students, eventually did their MSCs, PhDs with us, and are now employed as early career scientists. So the scientists are definitely there. I think the biggest threat is these scientists leaving for bigger salaries to industry rather than staying in science. But we have a lot of dedicated, really excellent scientists working for us at the moment. In the diving field, not so well transformed, but we have several of our scientists and technicians that are now undergoing or busy with their diving qualifications. It often starts with swimming lessons and then getting them comfortable in the ocean, just snorkeling and so forth, before they feel comfortable enough to go on a research diving qualification course.
Right.
But yeah, I'm very positive about what the demography looks like in ocean sciences now compared to what it was, say, 15, 20 years ago.